6 of the largest stones ever moved in Peru are in Ollantaytambo. This is a sprawling set of ruins in the Sacred Valley. And as usual, you see the big, tightly fitting megalithic stones together with the small modern ones.
Every year, thousands of tourists walk past the wall of the Six Monoliths in Peru, snapping photos, believing the standard guidebooks. They are told this was a military fortress built in the 1400s, but the stone tells a different story. New forensic analysis of the rock face shows weathering patterns that push the construction date back by over a millennium. Combined with evidence of high-speed drills and inexplicable transport logistics, the official story is falling apart. We are looking at the remnants of a culture that vanished long before the Inca ever rose to power. The anomalies that rewrote history. High in the Sacred Valley of Peru, at an altitude of 9,160 feet, sits a fortress that simply should not exist. If you follow the standard history books, everything here makes sense. But if you look at the physics, the geology, and the engineering, Ollantaytambo is a crime scene that defies explanation. This complex of terraces, temples, and megalithic walls is constructed from massive andesite blocks, with some individual stones weighing over 50 tons. These weren't just picked up from a nearby field, they were transported across a raging river and dragged up a sheer mountainside from quarries over 4 miles away. The stones are fitted together with a level of precision that makes modern masonry look clumsy. You cannot slide a razor blade between them. The surfaces are not just smooth, they are polished to a mirror finish that reflects the mountain sky. But here is the catch. The construction techniques appear to change mid-wall. It looks as if different builders, possessing vastly different skill levels and technologies, worked on the same structure centuries apart. It is a visual clash that has puzzled independent researchers for years, but the academic world remained firm on the conventional timeline. That changed in early 2025. A multidisciplinary team brought new ground-penetrating radar, three-dimensional laser scanning, and petrographic analysis equipment to the site to finally settle the debate. Instead of confirming the history books, the scans expose something that changes our entire understanding of the Americas. The digital reconstruction revealed tool marks that do not match Inca bronze implements. It showed evidence of a construction sequence that completely defies the accepted timeline. And most disturbing of all, there are signs that the massive stones may have been shaped using a technique we do not understand and cannot replicate today. Basically, the findings expose a reality that is hard to swallow for traditional archaeologists. Ollantaytambo might not be an Inca construction at all. The evidence increasingly suggests that the famous Inca emperor merely inherited a partially completed megalithic site from an unknown earlier culture and attempted to finish the work they did not fully comprehend. This isn't just about moving rocks, it is about the timeline of civilization itself. Let's break down why this matters so much. Ollantaytambo sits about 60 miles northwest of Cusco, strategically positioned where the Urubamba Valley narrows. The site served as both a temple complex and a fortress, and it was famously the location where Inca Emperor Manco Inca defeated Spanish conquistadors in 1537. It was one of the few major Inca military victories against European invaders, proving their strategic brilliance. But what tourists photograph and historians debate isn't the battlefield, it is the Temple of the Sun. This massive stone structure on the upper terrace features 6 enormous monoliths standing upright in a row. Each one is approximately 13 feet tall and weighs an estimated 50 tons. These stones, collectively called the Wall of the Six Monoliths, are made of red porphyry andesite. This is not soft limestone or sandstone. Andesite is an extremely hard volcanic rock with a Mohs hardness of roughly 7, which is comparable to hardened steel. To cut this, you need something harder than the stone itself. Yet the stones are precisely shaped into rectangular blocks with perfectly flat surfaces. They fit together with joints so tight they appear fused. The surfaces are polished smooth, not roughly dressed with hammerstones, but finished to a level you would expect from modern machine tools. The crazy part is where these 50-ton blocks came from. They were quarried at a site called Cachicat, on the opposite side of the Urubamba River, approximately 4 miles away across rugged, unforgiving terrain and at an elevation 1,000 feet higher than the temple. The conventional story attributes Ollantaytambo to the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, who ruled from approximately 1438 to 1471. According to this narrative, the Inca quarried the stones, transported them down the mountain across the river and up the other side to the temple site, all using bronze tools, wooden rollers, and rope made from plant fibers. The precision fitting was allegedly achieved through patient grinding and trial and error placement. This explanation has satisfied conventional archaeology for decades because it fits the timeline. But the 2025 scans expose why it cannot be correct, or at least why it is definitively incomplete. The scanning project began with high-resolution three-dimensional laser mapping of every stone surface at the Temple of the Sun and the surrounding structures. The goal was to document tool marks to reverse engineer the construction method. What the team found was extraordinary and deeply problematic. Under magnification and three-dimensional surface analysis, the stones show two completely different types of working. The most precisely fitted stones, particularly the Six Monoliths, show surfaces that are extraordinarily smooth with no visible tool marks at all. It is as if the surfaces were cast or molded rather than carved. Modern petrographic analysis confirmed the stones are natural and not cast material, but the surface characteristics do not match any known ancient or modern stonework technique. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, the lead geologist on the project, explained that andesite of this hardness, when worked with bronze tools using pecking or grinding techniques, leaves a distinctive surface texture. You should see microscopic pitting, directional scratching, and evidence of the abrasive process. The Six Monoliths show none of this. The surfaces are smooth at a microscopic level with a crystalline structure that appears almost vitrified, as if subjected to intense heat or some form of unknown surface treatment. However, other stones at the site, particularly those in the upper terraces and some of the smaller walls, show completely different working. These stones have visible tool marks, rougher surfaces, and less precise fitting. The contrast is stark and undeniable. The megalithic core stones appear almost machine-finished, while surrounding stones show crude handwork. This two-tier quality suggests two different construction phases by builders with vastly different capabilities. The sophisticated megalithic work appears to be earlier, with cruder Inca-era construction added around and atop it. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, because the deeper the researchers looked, the more the physical evidence began to contradict the official story. The rock surfaces were telling a story that the history books had completely ignored. The evidence locked in stone. The investigation didn't stop at the wall, it extended all the way back to the source. The 2025 scans documented something previous researchers had noted but never fully quantified: unfinished stones at both the quarry and the temple site. At the Cachicata quarry, dozens of massive blocks lie in various stages of extraction. Some are nearly freed from the bedrock, while others are barely begun. The tool marks at the quarry show the same two-tier pattern found at the temple. Some surfaces show sophisticated working with minimal visible tooling, while others show crude percussion marks, as if someone was trying to copy the work but didn't have the right equipment. Most intriguingly, several massive stones lie along the ancient transport route between the quarry and the temple, abandoned midway through the journey as if work stopped suddenly and was never resumed. One specific stone, weighing an estimated 70 tons, sits halfway down the mountain slope. It is partially shaped, seemingly ready for transport, but it was never moved. Another giant lies at the river's edge. Dr. Mendoza's team used ground-penetrating radar along the entire transport route, searching for evidence of ramps, roadways, or engineering features that would explain how 50-ton stones were moved across this terrain. They found nothing conclusive. There were no compacted earth layers suggesting ramps, no stone alignments indicating reinforced roadways, and no evidence of the massive temporary infrastructure you would expect for moving megalithic stones. The conventional explanation is that the Inca used wooden rollers and hundreds of workers pulling with ropes. Experimental archaeology has shown this method can work for moving large stones over flat terrain, but the Ollantaytambo route is anything but flat. It descends 1,000 feet from the quarry to the river, crosses the Urubamba River, and then climbs approximately 400 feet to the temple site. The physics of moving 50-ton stones down a mountain slope with only rope and rollers is terrifying. You are fighting gravity every inch of the way. The stone naturally wants to accelerate downhill, and controlling that descent requires enormous braking force. Rope made from plant fiber has limited tensile strength. If the ropes break during the descent, a 50-ton stone becomes an uncontrollable projectile that will destroy everything in its path. Modern heavy transport operations moving large stones down slopes use steel cables, mechanical braking systems, and extensive safety protocols. The idea that Inca workers accomplished this with plant fiber ropes and wooden equipment strains credibility, especially given that they apparently did it dozens of times without catastrophic failures since the stones arrived intact at the temple. Then there is the river crossing, which is an engineering nightmare in itself. The Urubamba River, even at its lowest flow, is a substantial water obstacle. To transport 50-ton stones across it, you would need either a ford, a shallow crossing point with a solid bedrock bottom capable of supporting the weight, or temporary bridges. In 2025, the team surveyed the riverbed at the presumed crossing point. The bedrock is there, but the configuration does not provide an ideal ford for megalithic transport. A temporary bridge is possible, of course. Wooden structures can support significant weight if properly engineered, but building a bridge capable of supporting 50 tons, then transporting the stone across it, then dismantling the bridge and rebuilding it for the next stone represents massive additional labor that must be accounted for in the timeline. And speaking of the timeline, that is where the official story really starts to crumble. Emperor Pachacuti's reign lasted approximately 33 years. During that short period, according to Inca history, he conquered vast territories, reorganized the entire empire, built Machu Picchu, rebuilt Cusco, and initiated construction at Ollantaytambo and multiple other sites. Even if he focused heavily on Ollantaytambo, the amount of megalithic stonework at the site represents years of continuous, flawless effort. The Temple of the Sun alone contains 6 monoliths weighing 50 tons each and dozens of smaller but still massive stones. If each 50-ton stone required 6 months to quarry, transport, and place, a conservative estimate given the engineering challenges, that is 3 years for just the 6 monoliths, not counting all the other stonework at the site. But the scans from 2025 revealed something striking about the placement. Analysis of soil layers beneath the foundation and stone contact points suggests the 6 monoliths were placed simultaneously or nearly so. They appear to have been in place during a single massive construction phase, not added one by one over many years. Such simultaneous placement would demand extraordinary organizational capability, multiple quarrying teams working in unison, concurrent transport operations, and coordinated lifting and positioning. The logistical complexity approaches or even exceeds what is commonly attributed to Inca engineering capabilities. Unless, and this is what the evidence increasingly suggests, the megaliths were not placed by Pachacuti at all. What if they were already there when the Inca arrived? What if they were inherited from an earlier culture and the Inca simply built around them, treating them as sacred ruins of the ancestors? The 2025 petrographic analysis provided the most startling evidence yet for this hypothesis. The team extracted microscopic samples from stone surfaces and analyzed the crystal structure, weathering patterns, and trace element composition. What they found was unexpected. The surfaces of the 6 monoliths show weathering characteristics suggesting exposure to environmental conditions for significantly longer than 500 years. Specifically, the rate of feldspar crystal weathering in the Andesi surfaces suggests a minimum exposure of 1,500 to 2,000 years, possibly longer. This does not tell us exactly when the stones were carved, but it indicates they have been exposed to the elements for much longer than the 5 centuries since Pachacuti's reign. Dr. Mendoza was cautious, noting that weathering rate calculations have uncertainties. Local climate variations and microenvironmental conditions can affect rates. However, the differential is significant. Either these stones are much older than attributed, or they were exposed to accelerated weathering conditions we do not fully understand. And then there is the water. The scans also revealed evidence of water erosion on some of the megalithic stones. The erosion patterns are consistent with flowing water exposure, not just rainfall. But Ollantaytambo sits on a mountainside, not in a flood zone. How would these stones be subjected to flowing water? One possibility is catastrophic flooding at some point in the distant past, perhaps related to glacial melt, dam burst floods, or extreme weather events. If the region experienced major flooding that subjected the stones to flowing water, it would need to have been significant enough to reach the Temple Terrace level, approximately 9,500 feet in elevation. Geological evidence from the Andes does suggest periodic catastrophic floods related to glacial lake outbursts and seismic events. If the megaliths were exposed during such an event, it would explain the water erosion. It would also suggest they are old enough to have experienced these ancient flooding events, pushing their construction date back potentially thousands of years. This brings us to the famous knobs, those small protrusions left on many stones at Ollantaytambo. These knobs have puzzled researchers for decades. They appear to be intentionally left during shaping, possibly as handling points for ropes during transport, or possibly as alignment markers during placement. The three-dimensional scanning revealed something unexpected here too. The knobs on the most precisely fitted stones show no signs of rope wear. If they were used as attachment points for ropes during dragging and lifting, you would expect abrasion, compression marks, and signs of rope friction. The knobs show none of this. They appear to be decorative or symbolic rather than functional. This raises a massive question. If the knobs were not used for transport, how were the stones moved? Modern stone movers attach lifting equipment to dedicated anchor points, holes drilled into the stone, metal loops embedded in mortar, and specialized grips. If the Ollantaytambo builders were not using the knobs for rope attachment, what were they using? Transport remains the central mystery. One possibility is that the knobs are later additions carved after the stones were in place, perhaps by Inca workers trying to replicate features they saw on inherited stones, but not understanding the purpose. This would explain why the knobs show no wear. They were never used functionally. But if the physical evidence wasn't baffling enough, the mathematical precision of the site takes the mystery to a whole new level. The impossible geometry. Laser scanning didn't just look at the surface texture, it analyzed the precise geometric relationships between the 6 monoliths. The spacing between the stones follows specific ratios that are invisible to the naked eye. The heights, though appearing slightly irregular, actually vary in a strict mathematical pattern. The widths progress in a sequence suggesting deliberate planning according to advanced geometric principles. Dr. Ana Rivera, a mathematician consulting on the project, analyzed these relationships. She found the spacing ratios between stones approximate 1 to 1.618, the golden ratio, to within 2% accuracy. The height variations follow a pattern related to square roots of successive integers. This is not random work. It is mathematically structured architecture. The golden ratio appears repeatedly in ancient Peruvian architecture at Cusco, at Machu Picchu, and at multiple megalithic sites. Either this is convergent cultural evolution, where different cultures independently discovered aesthetically pleasing proportions, or there is knowledge transfer we do not understand, possibly from a shared earlier source. The 2025 research also investigated the polished surfaces of the monoliths. Achieving mirror-smooth surfaces on andesite is extraordinarily difficult. Modern stone polishing uses rotating diamond-impregnated pads, progressively finer grits, sustained pressure, and high-speed motion. The process takes hours even with power tools. How did Inca or pre-Inca workers achieve similar polish using bronze tools and abrasive sand? The conventional answer is patient hand grinding over months or years. But experimental replication has shown this method produces distinctive surface characteristics, directional scratching, slightly uneven polish, and evidence of the handwork process. The Ollantaytambo surfaces show none of this. The polish is uniform without directional bias, suggesting either a rotating tool or some other technique that does not leave the signature of hand grinding. Some researchers have proposed stone softening theories, suggesting that ancient Peruvian cultures had knowledge of chemical or thermal treatments that could temporarily make stone more plastic, allowing it to be shaped and polished more easily. Local legends speak of plant extracts that could soften rock, particularly a crimson plant known to the birds of the deep jungle. But no physical evidence supports this. No chemical residues, no documented processes, and no unambiguous historical descriptions exist. The 2025 team specifically tested for chemical signatures on stone surfaces that might indicate such treatments. They found nothing conclusive. Either the stone softening theory is wrong, or any chemical treatments have degraded completely over time, leaving no detectable trace. Here is something else that points to a lost technology. The scans revealed evidence of seismic damage and repair. Several stones show ancient crack patterns and evidence of earthquake damage, and they have been filled with carefully fitted stone patches. The repairs use similar techniques to the original construction, but show slightly less precision, suggesting they were done by people maintaining inherited structures rather than the original builders. The Andes are seismically active. Ollantaytambo has experienced countless earthquakes over millennia. The fact that the megalithic structures survived while Spanish colonial buildings nearby were destroyed and rebuilt multiple times speaks to the engineering sophistication of the original construction. The precision fitting of the stones provides earthquake resistance. The stones can move slightly during seismic events without the structure collapsing. Modern seismic engineering uses similar principles, allowing movement within tolerances rather than rigid construction that breaks under stress. Did the ancient builders understand seismic engineering principles? Or did they develop these techniques empirically through trial and error? Either way, the achievement is remarkable, creating earthquake-resistant structures that still stand after potentially thousands of years of seismic activity. The 2025 findings also documented something controversial: possible evidence of earlier structures beneath the visible Ollantaytambo complex. Ground-penetrating radar detected subsurface anomalies, regular geometric patterns that could be foundations, walls, or other architectural features buried under later construction and sediment accumulation. The team proposed targeted excavations to investigate these anomalies, but the work has not been completed. If confirmed, subsurface structures would revolutionize our understanding of Ollantaytambo's timeline, showing that the site was built, buried or abandoned, and then later reoccupied and rebuilt. This pattern appears at other Andean sites. Tiwanaku shows evidence of multiple construction phases spanning centuries or millennia. Chavin de Huantar has subsurface structures predating the visible architecture. The idea that Ollantaytambo similarly has hidden earlier phases is not radical. It is consistent with broader patterns in the region. What makes Ollantaytambo special is the quality contrast. If the megalithic core is significantly older than the Inca-era additions, it pushes sophisticated stonework in the Andes back in time, possibly to cultures we know little about. Pre-Inca civilizations like Tiwanaku or Wari, or even earlier peoples lost to the mist of time. The Spanish chroniclers who documented the Inca Empire recorded something interesting that is often overlooked. When asked about the greatest megalithic structures, the Inca themselves claimed they did not build them. They attributed works like Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman to earlier peoples, sometimes called the First People, or connected to the creator god Viracocha. Modern archaeology has generally dismissed these accounts as mythology, a way for the Inca to claim divine lineage. But what if they were historical memory? What if the Inca were accurately reporting that they inherited these sites from predecessors whose capabilities exceeded their own? The findings from 2025 do not prove this hypothesis, but they provide evidence consistent with it. The quality contrast, the weathering patterns, and the construction sequence showing sophisticated work overlaid by cruder additions all suggest inheritance and attempted continuation rather than original construction. Dr. Mendoza summarized the team's conclusions this way: Ollantaytambo shows clear evidence of multiple construction phases using different techniques and achieving different quality levels. The megalithic core, particularly the Temple of the Sun monoliths, represents a level of stonework sophistication that may predate the Inca Empire. Whether this work was done by Inca predecessors like Tiwanaku or by even earlier cultures remains unclear. Attributing all of Ollantaytambo to Pachacuti's 33-year reign becomes increasingly untenable as we examine the evidence in detail. The stones at Ollantaytambo sit in the Sacred Valley, precisely fitted, polished smooth, weighing 50 tons each. Three-dimensional scans have measured them to millimeter accuracy. Geological analysis has examined their weathering. Petrographic studies have analyzed their surfaces. And the conclusion is uncomfortable. We do not fully understand how they were made, when they were made, or who made them. The conventional Inca attribution explains some features but struggles with the precision, the polish, the transportation logistics, and the timeline. The alternative, that the megaliths are older and inherited from earlier builders, fits the physical evidence better but requires accepting that sophisticated engineering capabilities existed in the Andes earlier and in cultures we know less about. So, if the Inca didn't cut these stones, who did? And where did they go? Silent predecessors. Standing before the wall of the Six Monoliths, a profound sense of smallness takes hold of you. It is not merely a physical sensation derived from the sheer verticality of the pink rhyolite slabs, though they tower imposingly against the Andean sky. Rather, it is a psychological shrinking, a realization that the ambition behind this structure is so vast, so calculating, and so terrifyingly capable that it humbles the modern mind. We like to believe we are the apex of engineering, yet here, overlooking the Sacred Valley, the stone remains silent, mocking our assumptions. The new scans conducted in 2025 have stripped away the convenient veneer of simplicity. By penetrating the rock with ground-penetrating radar and high-resolution LiDAR, these scans expose the complexity of the interior joinery, document the impossible precision of the cuts, and reveal timeline anomalies that standard history books struggle to reconcile. They do not provide simple answers. Instead, they fracture the timeline. Consider the physics of what stands before you. These are not symbolic gestures. They are real, measurable, tangible stones analyzed by the cold, hard instruments of modern science. Each of the 6 main monoliths weighs approximately 50 tons. To understand the magnitude of this, one must look across the valley to the Cachacata Quarry, located 4 miles away on a completely different mountain range. The builders did not simply drag these stones, they had to lower these 50-ton behemoths down a steep, treacherous slope, transport them across the violent currents of the Urubamba River, and then, in a feat that defies friction and gravity, drag them up the steep incline of the Ollantaytambo spur. And they did this without the wheel, without iron, and without draft animals, according to the conventional narrative. Yet the transport is only the beginning of the impossibility. The scans reveal that the stones are fitted together with a precision that makes a modern bank vault look clumsy. We have long marveled that a razor blade cannot fit between the joints, but the 2025 analysis shows that this contact remains perfect even deep within the stone, where no eye could see. The surfaces were not just cut, they were polished to a mirror finish, exhibiting signs of what looks like vitrification. Stone turned to glass through intense heat or chemical treatment. The evidence increasingly suggests multiple builders across potentially thousands of years. There is a distinct discontinuity in the construction styles. You see the rough fieldstone mortar work of the known Inca period, and it sits adjacent to or on top of these megalithic masterpieces. The difference in technology is as stark as a mud brick hut standing next to a skyscraper. Despite our advanced robotics and artificial intelligence, we still cannot fully explain how the most sophisticated work here was accomplished. We can hypothesize about ramps and levers, but the scale of labor required for such methods borders on the absurd. The mystery of Ollantaytambo is not whether it is impressive, that is, self-evident. The mystery is who built the core structure, when they did it, and how they manipulated granite and porphyry as if it were clay. The recent scans expose these questions in unprecedented detail, showing that the answers we have accepted for decades do not fully account for what exists carved in andesite on that Peruvian mountainside. Weathering patterns detected on the monoliths suggest they may have been exposed to the elements for centuries, perhaps millennia, before the Inca Empire rose to power. This leads us to a compelling, albeit controversial, conclusion. Perhaps the Inca were not the architects of the impossible, but the guardians of it. It is entirely plausible that they found these stones, recognized their inherent power and the echo of a lost first culture, and built their empire upon the foundations of giants. They honored this place not because they made it, but because they understood that something greater than themselves had walked this mountain before them. As we look closer with our lasers, our radar, and our new perspective, the past doesn't get simpler. It gets deeper, more complex, and infinitely more mysterious. The wall of the Six Monoliths stands not as a tomb, but as a question mark carved into the side of the world, waiting for us to finally understand the answer. Are we looking at the work of the Inca at the absolute height of their power, using techniques lost to the Spanish conquest? Or are we staring at the fingerprints of a civilization that history has forgotten? Hit that like button if you want to see more archaeological mysteries unraveled, and subscribe so you don't miss the next discovery.